VA,
a virtual assistant,
hiring,
VA,
hiring,
a virtual assistant,
when you should hire a VA.
when you should hire a VA.
Alright, there's a lot of content on YouTube about virtual assistants, but I found that the majority of it is really not that comprehensive and does not touch on the most important parts that you need to know before you go out and you hire your own virtual assistant. Personally, like, if I didn't have a video like this video right now showing me exactly what to do and how to do it, I would have had no idea how to actually hire a VA. It's not really one of those things that's just like common sense. It actually takes some knowledge to do this effectively. So this video is going to be a comprehensive guide on how to find, hire, and train your first VA or virtual assistant. Definitely not one of the sexiest topics that I've ever made a video about, but I think it's going to be extremely useful if you're in the situation where you kind of have a store that's doing well and you're like, man, I probably should hire a VA at this point to fulfill orders. It's kind of taking up a lot of my time, but I'm not really sure how to do it. I'm kind of scared of it. It's a little bit confusing. I don't really know how. This video, it's for you. So what we're going to cover in this video is as follows. First, we're going to talk about how much it actually costs to hire a VA. And yeah, spoiler alert, it's really, really fucking cheap. I'm going to show you the website that I use to hire my VAs. I'm going to walk you through the entire process of creating a listing, getting responses, filtering through different applicants. I'm going to walk you through kind of my interview process, how I interview different applicants and figure out who's the best one. And then finally, I'm going to give you some tips for training your VA, making sure they don't do any sketchy shit, like hint, stealing from you or trying to steal from your customers, etc. We're going to cover how to pay your VAs. And really, this video is just going to be a comprehensive guide. By the end of this, you will know everything that you could possibly need to know to go out and actually hire your first virtual assistant. So first, how much does it cost? This might sound a little bit like slave labor, but generally speaking, a virtual assistant is only going to cost you anywhere between like $2 to $4 an hour, and maybe even less. If they're working for you full time, that's usually going to amount to somewhere between $300 and $500 a month, which is like absolute pennies compared to what they can actually do for you. Now, what can VAs actually do for you? Obviously, it depends on your business and what you're doing. Most of this video is going to be centered around using VAs in terms of e-commerce and dropshipping. So here's some of the main things that I have VAs do. Customer service, order fulfillment, graphic design, managing social media. I've actually even had a VA book an Airbnb for me when I was traveling. Basically, a VA will do just about anything within reason that you ask them to do. They're not rocket scientists and you can't expect them to do really high-level stuff, but just about any kind of menial, time-consuming task, virtual assistants can do these things for you. And for anyone wondering, I'm not sure if this kind of got lost, but this is a real person. This isn't like a virtual AI type person. This is a real person in a different country working for you. Now, where do you actually go and find a VA? There's definitely a lot of different places where you can find a VA, but personally, I only use one specific website. That website is called onlinejobs.ph. It's a Filipino website, and just about every single applicant on there is going to be Filipino living in the Philippines. The reason Filipino VAs are great is because the Philippines is a very westernized country. I don't remember the whole history of it, but I believe they used to be a British colony or something, and as such, the people there are much more westernized than a lot of other countries in that region. They tend to speak really good English, and they also tend to be very tech-oriented. Now, the monthly fee for this website, onlinejobs.ph, is $69 a month. Wink, wink. But the good news is you don't really have to pay that monthly fee. You can really just pay that once, and then once you hire someone, you can just cancel your subscription because you don't really need it anymore. Unlike other freelancing sites like Upwork or Fiverr, these people are not working for you through the website, right? On Fiverr and Upwork, you're actually paying them through the website, and they have their rules and restrictions and everything like that. And they take a fee, and it's kind of annoying. With onlinejobs.ph, your VA is working for you directly. You don't have to go through any intermediaries. Now, real quick, in regards to e-commerce and dropshipping, a pretty common question is like, well, when does it actually make sense to hire a VA? And my answer to that is really just when your store is both consistent and profitable. At first, you definitely want to do customer service and fulfill orders yourself just so that you actually know how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, then it's going to be hard to train your VA to do it. But once you're getting a consistent couple orders a day, it doesn't have to be that much. Like, you could literally be doing just a handful of orders a day, and it could honestly still make sense. Personally, I think that you really want to do this like as quickly as possible once you're consistent and profitable, because it's going to take so much off your plate and free up so much of your time that can be better spent on other things like, actually making money. All right, all that aside, how do you actually get applicants to apply to your job on onlinejobs.ph? So what you're going to do is you're going to go to onlinejobs.ph, you're going to make an account, you're going to sign up, you're going to pay for the subscription, and from there, you're going to make a job posting. It's really simple. This platform is honestly really useful and easy to use. In your job posting, there's a few things you want to do. First, you want to be very specific in the tasks that you need to outsource. Customer service, Shopify order fulfillment, graphic design. Tell people exactly what skills you're looking for and exactly what you need done. For example, if I'm just looking for a general VA to do customer service and fulfill orders on a Shopify store, I'm going to say that experience with Shopify is definitely preferred. I'm going to say experience with customer service via email or Facebook messages is definitely preferred. Things like that. You really don't have to overthink it. You can just make a very simple listing. However, there is kind of one caveat to this. Something I like to do, because on onlinejobs.ph, what's going to happen once you make a listing is you're going to get a shit ton of responses. Like, I'm talking hundreds of responses. The majority of those are going to be automated, right? These people who are trying to get VA jobs, they've set it up so that when someone creates a new listing, they automatically send like a templated application for it, and you're just kind of going to be overwhelmed with all these different applicants that you're getting. So what I like to do is I like to hide a piece of specific instructions in the job listing. A lot of times it's just something stupid like start your application with the word zebra. That way, when I'm going through listings, I can just immediately see if zebra is not the first word, then I just immediately ignore it because that obviously tells me that person did not actually read my listing. That's going to automatically disqualify a lot of people, so that's really good. From there, the last thing I do in these listings is just tell people to leave their Skype ID so that I can just contact them via Skype for an interview. And really, like, that's it for the basics of the job listing. Now, on to the next part, actually filtering through all these hundreds of applicants that you're bound to get. So what I like to do is I like to narrow it down to just 5 applicants. Since you're getting so many responses, you really should have like an abundance of qualified people to choose from. Make sure that your top 5 candidates have all the required skills that you need. If you're hiring them for the purpose, like most of the time what I'm hiring them for, which is for Shopify for customer service and stuff like that, make sure they've experienced the Shopify and customer service. As you notice with dropshipping, most people who tried this stuff, even if they do a little bit well at first, they usually end up failing in the long run. So there's actually a lot of VAs who have worked with Shopify before and are qualified and just don't have a job right now because the store that they're working on went out of business. Another big thing is you want to make sure that they don't have any other current jobs or they're not currently in school. Ideally, you want someone who's going to be able to dedicate a huge portion of their time, like they're going to be working for you full time, like 8 hours a day. If they have other jobs or they're in school and stuff like that, like that's probably not what you want. Be aware of that and then look through the applications and see kind of the wage that they're requesting. Make sure it fits your budget. Usually it will. Usually it's not really going to be too out of the ballpark. Ultimately, you're going to have a shit ton of people to choose from, and really you don't even need to go through all of the applications. Go through some of them, pick 5 that meet all of your qualifications, and then just go on. And now comes the hard part, which is interviewing your top 5 candidates and actually choosing one. So I do have a pretty specific set of interview questions that I'm about to show you in a second, but first I want to tell you the general things I'm looking for in a candidate. The first thing is going to be likability. Obviously, you're going to be spending a decent amount of time talking to this person. Most of the time, it's just going to be, over text, over Skype. But still, you're going to be communicating with them a lot. And if you don't like them, if they say weird shit and you're just kind of not feeling it, then don't choose that person. Second thing you want to look for is loyalty. There's a huge difference between just a regular old VA who's just hopping around from guy to guy and just kind of like guru hopping. Huge difference between that and someone who is going to be there for the long haul, work with you for like years. Obviously, this is not the easiest thing to tell right off the bat when you're interviewing someone over Skype, but I do have a pretty good question to ask that's usually a decent indicator of whether or not they will be a loyal VA. Third thing I'm looking for is general intelligence. They don't need to be like fucking Einstein, but they need to be intelligent enough to do the things that I need them to do. And the way that I kind of test for this is through an actual test that I make all 5 applicants go through. Stay tuned because that's coming up very soon. Fourth thing I'm looking for, pretty obvious, is skills. By this point, your top 5 applicants should already really have the skills that you need. Shouldn't be too much of a problem at this point, but it's extremely important, so make sure you're looking out for that. And finally, the fifth thing I'm looking for, and one of the most important, is prior experience. The more prior experience a VA has, just the better they're going to be to work with, especially if you're kind of just first starting in business. You don't want to be spending a shit ton of time trying to train someone on stuff that you barely even know how to do yourself. If they already have experience with it, it just makes the whole process a whole lot easier, a whole lot faster. So those are the 5 main things that I'm looking for. So what I'll do is basically once I have the 5 people that I've chosen, I'm going to message each of them on Skype and I'm going to ask them for a time that we can actually go through an interview. Most of the time I interview them not even through a call or a video call or anything like that. I literally just do it over text on Skype chat. A big reason for that is a big part of your VA's job, depending on what they're going to be doing, at least in terms of Shopify and things that I would kind of hire a VA for. A big part of their job is going to be writing. They're going to be replying to emails, they're going to be replying to Facebook messages, they're going to be talking to your customers, and you need to make sure that they actually can write good English. Once you've hired them, I think it's definitely a good idea to talk to them over a voice call just to kind of build that connection a little bit. But I think for the interview process, just Skype chat, perfectly fine. Now, here are some of the main questions that I ask my candidates when I'm doing these interviews. First one, what's your current occupation and how many hours do you work a week? You want to get an idea of what they're doing now and see if that kind of fits in with what you're going to be having them do. A lot of times they're not going to have a current job right now. So the follow-up question I like to ask to that is if they are currently working a job, I ask them how long they've been working there, and if they say that they're currently in between jobs, then I ask them how long they worked with their past employer. In most cases, the longer that they've been with their past employer, the better. It's not a 100% indication, but the longer they've been with their past employer or their current employer, the more likely they are to be loyal to you. Next question, have you ever done customer service before? And if so, what kind of customer service have you done? And that's kind of a blanket question. I will ask that question in regards to whatever it is that I'm hiring them to do. I'll ask them, have you ever worked with Shopify before? Have you ever fulfilled orders through a Bearlo before? Have you ever talked to suppliers on AliExpress before? Have you ever done graphic design before? Have you ever managed social media profiles before, etc., etc. And this mainly, I think it's pretty obvious, is just to get a better idea of their past skills and experience. If possible, especially for something like graphic design, I'll ask them can you show me examples of the work that you've done? It's not always going to be possible, but it's ideal if you can. So those are kind of the initial questions I asked. Now I want to show you the actual test that I go through to kind of test their intelligence. And then after that, I have a few more follow-up questions I like to ask just to really make sure. So how I test one of my applicants' intelligence is through some sort of a, a test. Basically, I'll ask them to do some specific task and make the description very vague. If I'm hiring them mainly for customer service, maybe I'll send them them a handful of customer service emails of really bad complaints that are really tough to deal with. And I'll send them over and I say, hey, can you respond back to me with what you would respond back to these messages? Or for example, if I was hiring them to do graphic design work, say maybe to make YouTube thumbnails, I'd ask them to make me a YouTube thumbnail. I would give them a couple examples. I would just say like, hey, can you make me a YouTube thumbnail for a video with this kind of topic in the style of these three guys? I won't even link their channels. I will just write their names, make the VA go look it up, see what the style of the thumbnail is, and then come back with their own version that's similar to that. Basically, the goal of this is to figure out, okay, so can they actually figure things out on their own? If you don't give them 100% spelled out, hold my hand instructions, can they still figure out what you want and what you need done? That, and then also, if the description's really vague, do they ask intelligent questions before starting? Ideally, you really want to find someone who's smart enough to ask the right questions when they need to, and also just kind of figure things out on their own when they can. Once they've completed the work, check it out. See how good the work is, take note of how long it actually took them, see how responsive they are throughout this whole process. This should give you a really good idea if this is the right person to hire or not. Now, some follow-up questions I'll ask: how many hours are you available to work per week? If you need someone to work full-time for you, then you want to make sure that they're available to work for you 40 hours a week. Ask them how much they're looking to get paid. Make sure that fits inside your budget constraints. Usually should. I've never had a problem with that. And then again, I like to ask, do you have any other working arrangements or studies? Are you in school or working for someone else, whatever? And then if so, how much are you getting paid for something like that, and how much time is it taking? Again, you want to make sure that they're not preoccupied with something else that's going to take their focus away from what you need done, but you also want to get an idea of how much they're getting paid currently, because ideally you don't want to be in a situation where they're taking a step down. If they're getting paid less working for you than they were wherever they were working before, then in my opinion, they're just not as likely to do good work for you, so that's something to look out for as well. Oh, and then side note, I like to just schedule these all at the same time, because since you're on chat, you can chat back and forth with all of them, and that way it also makes it easier to compare your different applicants' work when you're doing these types of tests. All right, so once you've gone through all that, you should have a really, really good idea of who your best choice is. Once you've chosen your person, just tell the other 4 people like, hey, we chose someone else for this position. We really appreciate you. You don't really want to burn that bridge, because if your VA ends up sucking, then you have these 4 other people who are probably also really solid options if this VA disappears on you or does some sketchy shit or is just not as good as you thought they were. So now that you know how to find and hire a VA, how do you actually train them? So really, this is a pretty simple process, and I think it's very easy to overthink, but you really just have to avoid that and just really use common sense here. First off, you want to give really specific instructions. Be very, very clear about what you need done, and also be very, very clear about the timeline and the deadline for when you actually need it done by. Make sure they're aware of the different priorities in your business. If orders need to be fulfilled every single day, then make sure that's the first thing they're doing, as opposed to waking up and doing customer service for a little while and then not fulfilling orders till later in the day. Make sure you're very clear with priorities and timeframes and all that kind of stuff. Personally, I like to ask my VA to send me daily updates on what they've done and then what still needs to be done. That should give you a good idea of how much they can get done in a certain amount of hours and how much work you can actually throw at them that they'll actually get done. I also think it's really important to invest the time up front to give really detailed feedback on their work when they first start. At that point, they're really going to be learning exactly what you want and getting a better idea of that, and the more clear and specific you can be and the more kind of time you invest in that, the better it's going to be and the easier it's going to work for you down the line. At first, I like to make their workload pretty light. You don't want to dump a whole shit ton of different things on them to do all at once, because it's just gonna be really confusing and they're probably not gonna get it all done very well. Start with like 1 or 2 things for the first week, and then over time gradually delegate new tasks. Also really important, be very friendly and approachable, and make sure that they know that it's welcome for them to ask you questions. You never want to be in a situation where your VA is doing stuff they don't know how to do because they're afraid to ask you questions about it. At the same time, if you're not happy with something, like, let them know. There is going to be a little bit of kind of a cultural and language barrier, not so much a language barrier if they're actually a good VA and they actually speak good English, but there's definitely going to be some sort of a cultural barrier. And in all likelihood, if you don't actually spell it out in very clear and plain terms, then they won't really know. So just be very upfront. Make sure when they do something good that you praise them. I think we all kind of enjoy being praised when we do a good job at something. It makes them feel good. It lets them know that they're doing the right thing, and it kind of incentivizes them to work even harder for you. Now, as for like kind of the specific tactical stuff of what you're training them and how you're training them to do the tasks that you're going to have them do, mainly I really just use Dropbox or Google Drive and kind of just share different templates and make screen record videos of me going through different processes of exactly what I need them to do. For customer service, I like to have a kind of pre-filled response sheet with a template for the most common things that people email about. Giving them something like that is definitely going to make their job easier. For order fulfillment, what I like to do is just go through the process on video. I record my screen, talk over with the audio, and then just walk through that process. And then anything else that you're going to be having them do, just make sure that you have some sort of documentation for that process for whatever that thing is. Video, templates, something like that. You don't really have to go super crazy with it, but you want to make sure that there's something there for them to see so that they know exactly what they need to be doing and also can refer back to it if they get confused. And then if it wasn't already obvious, you'll also want to make sure that you're actually checking up on their work. If they're answering emails, then go through the sent folder and see the replies that they're sending to people who are sending you emails. If they're fulfilling orders, make sure that they are actually fulfilling orders correctly. Go through, double check everything, and just make sure, definitely at least for the first week or two, and honestly, in my opinion, you should be doing this like all the time. I've made the mistake of just assuming my VA was doing the right thing, even when they had been doing it right for like months straight and we had zero issues. Sometimes things change, sometimes they get a little complacent, sometimes they straight up try to fuck you over. Make sure that you're paying attention to what they're doing and do not take for granted that they are just following your instructions as you put it. Usually it will be the case, but not always, and you definitely always want to be sure. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience on that one. So once you've gone through and you've talked to them and you've given them all the resources they need to do the things that you need them to do, obviously you need to give them access to the things that they need to actually do those things. If they're going to be doing customer service, answering emails, you want to make sure that they have access to a support email. I'd recommend that, especially if you're doing things with G Suite, that you have your own email, which is kind of the admin and has control over the support email. That way you can just give them access to the support email and not really worry about them doing anything sketchy with it. If you're going to have them reply to Facebook comments and Instagram comments and things like that, make sure that you add them as an editor to your Facebook page. And then for AliExpress, there actually used to be a way where you could give your VA access to your AliExpress account without actually giving them access to your credit cards. They would place the orders but not pay for them, and then you would go through manually and pay for them yourself. That was a way to kind of safeguard yourself when you hire a new VA to make sure that they don't do anything sketchy with your credit card information. As of the time I'm recording this video, I do not think that you can do that anymore. So I think you just got to give them your AliExpress login. You got to give them your credit card information if you want them to fill the orders for you. Just make sure you're checking up on your credit card that they're not stealing shit from you. Most of the time, I don't think you'll really have a problem with that. Obviously, though, it does happen, so just look out for that. And finally, if you're doing e-commerce or dropshipping and you're using Shopify, you want to give them access to Shopify. You don't need to give them access to everything. Actually, these somewhere on screen, I don't know, somewhere on screen, I have a little pop-up that will show you the access that I give my VAs on Shopify. And really, guys, like, those are the main things in regards to finding, hiring, and training VAs. In regards to paying your VA, always make sure that you pay your VA on time. When you're initially hiring them, you want to make sure that you guys kind of hash out the payment terms very clearly so that you guys are both on the same page. Most of the time I pay my VAs weekly, and usually the way I pay them is through PayPal. Something you might not know, or maybe you do, I don't know. But in the Philippines, it's very common to have something I think they call like a 13th month. Basically, I think it's pretty common in the Philippines for companies to pay their employees a double salary in December as a sort of bonus. I recommend that you do this. I always do this. It's not a lot of money to you, but to them, it can be a really life-changing amount of money. I remember last year, one of my VAs was like super stoked about it, and she was like freaking out over Skype, and she was telling me about how she was going to use that money to pay for something for her mom or something. Her mom had cancer, I guess, and she wanted to get a gift for her mom. It was like very sweet. It makes it feel all warm and fuzzy inside, so definitely do that. And then something that's optional, I don't really do this a whole lot because most of the time my VAs aren't really doing things that are based on performance. But if your VA is doing something that you can base on performance, then you can also set kind of performance-based incentives to raise their pay when they hit certain milestones. That's always a good thing to do. Humans, we like incentives. We work on incentives, so there's that. And then finally, I give some final tips for how to get the most out of your VAs. Over time, as they continue to work for you, you can slowly add more complex tasks to their resume. Holy shit, that was so hard to say. Complex tasks. Make sure that you're rewarding them for good work and loyalty, either through increasing their pay or even just through like just saying, hey, you're doing a really good job. I really appreciate you. That goes a long way and probably further than you expect. Another thing I think is important is you want to be looking for and recognizing certain talents. If you see potential in a VA to be doing something that they're really good at, then like absolutely train them to do that. A lot of VAs are just going to be kind of regular old VAs who they get the work that you need done, but they're not really going like crazy above and beyond. But every once in a while, you will find a diamond in the rough. But if you do, you want to make sure that you hold them close and that you allow them to grow as your business grows. And then finally, a little bit of a smaller thing, but I think it's really important to actually make some sort of an effort to build some sort of a connection with them. Even though to you, this is just some virtual assistant who's working for very little pay to do the kind of menial tasks you don't really want to do. To them, this is their full-time job. People identify with the work they do. And again, having a really talented, really hardworking, really loyal VA is such a fucking asset. Even if you don't want to build a connection with them out of the kindness of your heart, like do it for the business purposes because it's worth it just for that, honestly. But really, folks, that is about it that I have for you in this video. I'm guessing this video probably won't be one of my most viewed videos, but I think it's probably one of my most helpful. If you got value from it, I'd very much appreciate it if you liked, commented, and subscribed. Let someone know about the NationMate YouTube channel. I like to think we're doing some pretty good stuff out here. Every little bit helps. So folks, I appreciate you for watching this video and spending a little bit of time with me today. Thanks again for watching. I will see you in the next video.